Thanks for being with us, Potterheads. We've got a new chapter for Backward with Purpose, Part 1, Always and Always by Dead Woodpecker. And here we are, Chapter 19, Malfoys and Blacks.
Chapter 19, Malfoys and Blacks. Chapter text. You're sure that the Gaunt Shack is rebuilt exactly the way it was? Harry asked Dumbledore. And the enchantments are there as well? Yes, Harry, Dumbledore said. When he goes to check it, he will have no idea that it is lost. I don't understand why this is so important, Sirius said. Why go to so much effort to ensure that Voldemort doesn't know you've been attacking his Horcruxes? Because, Harry said, when the time comes to destroy him, I don't want him fighting desperately. Last time he unleashed fiend fire and killed almost every student in the castle because he thought that it would break us, stop us from fighting, and that we would give up if we knew exactly what lengths he was going to take to maintain his control. Sirius paled. He unleashed fiend fire on students. It wasn't a question. Harry nodded. It haunted him. The room of requirement was packed with people, and even though it had adjusted itself to the crowd, there was barely standing room. Harry and a Ravenclaw 7th year, named Nicholas Boot, had just returned from looking for the tiara. Harry nearly fell down the stairs when he saw that the remaining members of the Order of the Phoenix waited for him. The other professors, who had been with Harry when Snape rather dramatically exited the school, followed him. What's going on? Fred Weasley asked. We're fighting, Harry said. Voldemort knows I'm here. He knows that he hasn't got much time left. You've got to hold them off. I've got to search the castle. What's the plan, Harry? Arthur Weasley asked. Professor Flitwick has cast protections around Hogwarts, Harry said. But it won't hold the Death Eaters for long. Patrol around the school. Don't take them in an open fight. Not yet. Disillusion yourselves. What about the younger students? Hannah Longbottom asked. My little sisters are here. Neville put his arm around his wife. We're going to ask those students who are of age if they want to fight, Professor Flitwick said. Those who are too young will make their way out of the secret entrance that leads to the Hog's Head Inn. Harry looked around the room. Oliver Wood, Angelina Johnson, Katie Bell, and Alicia Spinnet stood in a tight circle near the twins. They would do perfectly. Any Quidditch players? Harry said loudly. He'd been out of school for nearly 4 years and didn't know who played for what house. But the young faces that made up Dumbledore's army, which still flourished despite the fact that the original members had long since graduated, told him that there was a good chance more than a few of them were at home on a broomstick. 10 others, besides Harry's old Quidditch team, separated themselves from the crowd. Listen, Harry said. I want you on brooms. You're to attack them from above. Dodge their spells the way you dodge bludgers. Disillusion yourselves and your broomsticks so they can't see you. We'll do it, Harry, Oliver said. His face was very pale. It's just another ugly team we're playing against. Harry nodded. Suddenly, he knew what to say. This is it, everyone. The big one, Fred said. The one we've been waiting for, George continued. Oliver managed to laugh. Harry pulled Fred and George aside once he saw that Oliver was barking orders. The younger ones listened raptly. Listen, I don't want you on the brooms. You know every secret passageway in and out of this school. Take some other students, and Neville, Hannah, and any other original member of Dumbledore's army you can find. Keep the Death Eaters from getting in that way. Does that include me as well? Ginny asked. No, Harry said shortly. I want you with me, Ron, and Hermione. So you can protect me? She smiled, but it was a bit dangerous. He had to choose his words carefully if he ever wanted to find himself in her bed again. No, Harry said. He bent and whispered in her ear. We're going to find another Horcrux tonight. I thought you might like to destroy it. She grinned. Good answer, Potter. Where are Ron and Hermione, by the way? Harry stood on his tiptoes and searched the crowd for them. Haven't seen them. They said something about a bathroom, Ginny said. Think they're releasing some tension before the fighting starts? Harry opened his mouth to laugh, but his scar hurt so badly that he feared that it would cleave his head in two. He opened his eyes and saw that he was standing in front of the gates that led to Hogwarts, murder in his heart. Rage gripped him. Potter had done the unthinkable, had found his Horcruxes. He must not be allowed to continue. He must be broken and defeated. Use fiend fire, he ordered his Death Eaters. Aim for where the students sleep. Kill them all. Bellatrix Lestrange laughed delightedly and lifted her wand before any of the others. Lord Voldemort looked at her approvingly. Of all his servants, she was the best. She never cowered from a task. She understood better than any of them that some things just needed to be done. No, he watched as the beautiful, destructive flames made their way to Gryffindor Tower and Ravenclaw Tower. The fire is like me, Voldemort thought. It purifies us from the unworthy. The screams began. No, no, Harry shouted. He was on the floor. Ginny held him down, her eyes wide with fright. No, fiend fire. He struggled to his feet, pushing past his old Quidditch team and knocking over Fred and George Weasley. He's attacking the students in their beds. But he knew that it was already too late. Are you all right, Harry? Sirius asked, concerned. Harry pulled himself away from the memory with effort, and was somewhat surprised to find that he was at Sirius' home in Godric's Hollow, and the summer between his 3rd and 4th year was waning. He was not at Hogwarts, and Voldemort had not just slaughtered an entire generation. Where is he? Harry smashed his hand down on the table. Damn it, how could he vanish off the face of the earth? He could quite easily, Dumbledore pointed out fairly. He can turn into a rat. As to where he is, I have no idea. I must admit that I'm hoping he is in Albania. I am too, Harry said. But that seems like an awful lot like luck, and we all know that if something can F up, it will. We don't even know if Wormtail is dead or alive, and I have no idea how we're going to pull of resurrecting Voldemort without him. Damn it. Harry got up and strode over to the window, looking out into the night. He ignored the fact that Dumbledore and Sirius were exchanging glances. He knew quite well that he had been in a beastly mood since the Dementor attack and Wormtail's strange escape. They did not, however, know the reason for this. He still had not told Ron and Ginny that he had lost his invisibility cloak. They had simply not had the time for it. 3rd year had ended with a host of things to talk about, and the other two were too distracted to notice. Harry knew that the longer he put off telling them, the angrier they would be. Listen, Harry said. I'm sorry. I'm exhausted. That spell, they had performed the Fidelius charm on Sirius' house here in Godric's Hollow and at Grimmauld Place. Took a lot out of me. It was true. Harry was secret keeper at Godric's Hollow, and he had felt the vastness of the trust Sirius was placing in him. It was an astonishingly good feeling, but it left Harry exhausted and vulnerable. Dumbledore, the secret keeper at Grimmauld Place again, did not show any sign of it. I'm going to bed. Harry made his way to the comfortable room that his godfather had prepared for him. Not for the first time, Harry wished that he had been able to forego the annual stay at the Dursleys. He'd spent 2 weeks with them, exactly 2 weeks, and then Sirius had come to take him away. Harry had had a great deal of fun seeing the expression on their faces when they saw the flying motorbike. He stumbled out of his robes and into his pajamas and fell into the bed that was just as warm and comfortable as the bed in Gryffindor Tower. He lay awake for a little while, but soon he drifted off to sleep. The secret burned gently inside his breast. He did not know if he dreamed before he saw inside Voldemort's mind. He only knew that one moment he was awake, and the next he was in an old, grand house. His heart beating fast, he remained a passive observer. As soon as the pain in his scar released him from his vision, Harry opened his eyes. He was tangled in his sheets, and when he tried to leap out of bed, he fell to the floor. He was both elated and confused at once, so he lay there like a turtle for a few moments, his mind racing. Pettigrew had been there with Voldemort. The old Muggle man, Harry felt a pang of sadness, had died. Voldemort was probably turning Nagini into a Horcrux at this moment. Once he'd gathered his thoughts, he leapt up and raced out of his room, bellowing Sirius at the top of his voice. He did not know if Sirius was still awake, did not know how long he had been asleep. By the quality of the night, it had not been very long. He came to a halt halfway down the stairs when he saw Sirius poke his head out of the kitchen, looking very guilty about something. "What is it, Harry?" he asked in a rather jovial voice. Dumbledore appeared behind him. Harry narrowed his eyes. "Tell me you haven't been discussing that completely ludicrous and stupid idea again." The other two remained silent. "We'll talk about that later," Harry warned. There was no way Sirius was going to break into Azkaban to get Rookwood. No way in hell. But they had more important things to discuss at the moment, and he was just as glad that Dumbledore was here. However, my scar hurt just now. Sirius and Dumbledore looked shocked. What? Sirius said blankly. Harry nodded. It was just the same as before. Wormtail found Voldemort, and now they're both back and plotting to kill me. Is it weird that I'm happy about that? You're saying, Dumbledore began, that despite our fears that everything had changed, Wormtail managed it after all? Don't ask me how it happened, Harry said. He looked over at Sirius. Have you still got those tickets to the World Cup? We're going to need them. The World Cup, Sirius said. He exchanged a weighty glance with Dumbledore. Haven't you, said that you didn't want to go? That was putting it mildly. When the tickets had arrived 2 weeks ago, the Ministry was still attempting to make amends with Sirius. Harry had rather vehemently expressed the fact that he absolutely did not want to be anywhere near the Weasleys, even if Ron and Ginny would be there. But matters had obviously changed. Bartemius Crouch Jr. would be there, would already be fighting the Imperius Curse, and would soon be meeting Lord Voldemort. I've changed my mind, Harry said shortly. The grounds on which over 100,000 wizards and witches from all over the world were gathered to watch the Quidditch World Cup was just as packed and loud as Harry had remembered. Peddlers selling omnioculars and other magical paraphernalia were doing a brisk trade as he and Sirius wandered over to their campsite. Harry felt a great sense of relief that they appeared to be going in a completely different direction from where he knew the Weasleys to be. Still, he was quite shocked when he realized who their neighbors were. Luna Lovegood and her father, Xenophilius, were merrily roasting what looked to be marshmallows, although Harry couldn't be sure, as they were about 10 times the size of any marshmallows he'd seen in the Muggle world, over a small fire. They appeared to be having a friendly argument, probably about whether or not Crumplehorn Snorkax could be found in Sweden as opposed to Norway. He grinned. Hey, Luna, he said loudly. Sirius, who had heard a great deal about his blonde friend, looked around with interest. Hi, Harry, she said brightly. Hi, Harry said to Xenophilius. You must be Luna's dad. I'm Harry Potter. The unkempt wizard stared at him, with the one eye that was not pointed inward at his nose, gaping. His eye flickered to Harry's scar, and Harry began to feel slightly uncomfortable under his close scrutiny. Ah, Xenophilius said. You look exactly how I thought you would. You've got the look of the Potters. I'm Sirius Black. Sirius extended his hand. Harry's godfather. It'll be quite the match, eh? He took in a rather extensive decorating. Everything from the tent to the cauldron was green. Rooting for Ireland, then? Yes, Luna said happily. How long have you been here, Harry? Just got in, Harry said easily. You? Oh, we've been here for a week, Xenophilius answered. Couldn't get any better tickets than that. I heard it's been a problem, Sirius said. We wouldn't have been able to get anything nearly this good if the Ministry weren't still feeling horribly guilty about throwing me into Azkaban without a trial. Yes, we heard, Xenophilius said. Horrible what they did. But I've always suspected, he said stoutly, that the Ministry is infected with Raxperts. They're small beings that cause the brain to numb and, though invisible, are able to do quite a bit of damage. I've got some charms to protect against them, but the heads of the various departments have refused my warnings time and again. Harry snorted, and Sirius barked with laughter. Luna and her dad did not look offended in the slightest. They spent the next several hours, after setting up their tent and returning to the Lovegoods with butterbeer and snacks, roundly abusing the Ministry. Sirius was so enthralled with the Raxpert theory that he invented proof of their existence, citing details of when he had been caught. When Xenophilius began to take notes, Harry suspected that the Quibbler would have another article about it in the next edition. Harry could not help but wonder what Ron and Ginny were up to at the moment. Was Hermione with them? He could almost see Mr. Weasley trying to light a match, his face alight with glee, while Hermione looked on, fondly exasperated. An image of the rune he had drawn last year during class flashed before his eyes, and he forced himself to turn to Luna and ask, do Crumplehorn Snorkax fly? All too soon, Harry, Sirius, and the Lovegoods had a part. The Lovegoods continued on to their seats in the middle of the stands, and Harry loitered a bit, pretending to watch a particularly loud peddler selling his wares. He was, in reality, bracing himself. He found it slightly ironic that he did not dread seeing the Malfoys at all. "The match is about to begin," Sirius pointed out finally. "Let's go." Harry nodded, and they made their way to the top box. Harry forced himself to go faster than he was wont to do. They were already there. Harry's eyes sought them out against his own volition, and the gang of redheads was arrayed in the bottom row. Ginny was seated next to Ron. Harry grinned, despite himself, when he saw Hermione next to him, sitting awfully close. The twins were laughing loudly with Bill and Charlie, while their mother and father spoke to Percy in quiet voices. Mrs. Weasley had obviously used the extra ticket provided by Harry's absence. "Sirius Black," Cornelius Fudge said jovially. "So glad you could make it. And you brought Harry Potter. How excellent, truly excellent." "Hello, Minister," Sirius said pleasantly. "Thank you for the tickets." "Anything at all." Fudge waved his arm expansively. Harry repressed the urge to roll his eyes. No reaction from the Weasleys yet. Fred and George were probably making too much noise for them to hear. Sirius looked around for empty seats. Harry nudged him and gestured toward 2 seats that were close to Winky the house elf and, under an invisibility cloak, Mr. Crouch's son. They also happened to be the only seats left and right next to Lucius Malfoy. "What are you doing here, Potter?" Draco Malfoy asked sullenly. "I've come to enjoy the game," Harry replied, very conscious of the fact that all the Weasleys had stiffened at the mention of his name. "Who'd you have to pay off to get here?" "Father was invited by the minister himself," Draco scowled. "Is that right?" Sirius placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. "So are we. Lucius," he added pleasantly. "Cousin Narcissa, you're looking well." Harry did not like the dangerous undercurrents, so he resolved to sit between Sirius and the Malfoys. Sirius knew who was sitting in the supposedly empty seat next to Winky as well as he did. "What are you talking about, cousin?" Draco asked. "My aunt and uncle," Sirius said very slowly, as though speaking to a rather stupid child. Harry suppressed the urge to cheer. "We're your grandmother and grandfather, which generally means that your mother and I are cousins." "Speaking of family," Sirius added cheerfully to Narcissa, who appeared as though she were carved from a piece of wood. "Andromeda, remember her? Your sister? Is doing very well. Her husband is a pretty great guy. I'm afraid I can't say anything like that of Bella, though. Azkaban has made her even more insane. And to think we all used to be one big, happy black family." "To much inbreeding," Harry said sadly, unable to resist. With the drama playing out between the Malfoys and Sirius, he could almost ignore the fact that the Weasleys were staring at him. "We're lucky to have escaped the madness, Sissy," Sirius said. "Yes, quite," Narcissa said, eyes straight forward. "Sirius Black is actually our cousin," Draco said, aghast. Harry heard Ron snort. Deciding that he had let Sirius play long enough, Harry sat in the chair behind Hermione. "Hi, Harry," she said. She smiled, though she looked apprehensive. Harry understood completely. "Hi, Hermione," he said. "Sirius, this is my friend Hermione. From school. The two of you didn't actually get a chance to meet last time." "Nice to meet you, Mr. Black," Hermione said politely. "Call me Sirius," he told her. "Mr. Black was my father, and he was a right old bastard." Sirius," she was taken aback. Harry couldn't blame her. "Do you know the Malfoys as well?" Sirius asked. Harry groaned. Sirius had apparently taken it upon himself to distract Harry as much as possible. "My cousin Sissy, her husband Lucius, and their son Draco. We've met," Hermione said cautiously. "Well, I met Draco anyway." She didn't mention that she had met Lucius Malfoy 2 years prior, and he had been rude about her parents. "How has your summer been?" Harry asked her, before Sirius could say anything else. "I'm surprised to see you here," he lied. "I didn't know you were coming." "So am I," Draco said. "Did your Muggle parents pay them to take you here?" He was obviously not confident enough to call her a mudblood, but the insinuation was clear, as was his thinly veiled insult directed at the Weasleys and their ongoing struggle for money. "Boys," Arthur Weasley said when Fred and George stood up. They reluctantly sat back down. "Actually, Draco," Harry said, "I'm a bit surprised that you're here, too. After all the stories that Sirius has told me about your Aunt Bellatrix." He let his voice trail away. then added, I'm actually pretty proud of the fact that the ministry doesn't blame all of her relatives for being a murderous bitch. Obviously, they've come a long way since they threw my godfather in Azkaban without a trial or evidence. He chanced a glance at Ron. His shoulders were shaking with silent laughter. Then he fixed his eyes back on Draco. Come to think of it, Sirius stretched lazily in his chair. I was glad to hear that the two of you, Sissy, Lucius, were able to escape going to Azkaban. You must have been so pleased that they believed that you were under the Imperius curse. Yes, Lucius said. Harry saw that his brow was beaded with sweat. You should be sweating, Harry thought, grimly satisfied. And not because of Sirius. Barty Crouch is sitting right there, listening to every word. We were lucky that the ministry was wise enough to know that we were innocent of the crimes of which we were initially accused. Luckier than me, Sirius grinned. Oh well, the ministry figured it out in the end, thanks to Harry and his friends. At least he hadn't mentioned Ron and Ginny by name. The tension in the top box was so heavy that it felt like a physical weight on Harry's chest. Harry was proud of Sirius' indirect accusations toward the Malfoys, and he could see himself having quite the laugh over it with Ron and Ginny once they returned to school. But he had the feeling that it was about to get ugly. Haven't you heard Cousin Sirius? Draco's blue eyes were alive with malice. Harry saw Ron straighten up rather abruptly. He didn't dare look at the other Weasleys, but the tension had grown even greater. He drew his wand, but kept it against his leg. Shut up, Malfoy, Harry said quietly. Everyone seemed to be holding their breath, mindful of the fact that they were all currently sitting in plain view of the highest officials in the Ministry of Magic. Hermione squeaked. Draco was apparently too stupid to realize this. Or perhaps he was betting on the fact that he was untouchable. He doesn't know. Potter, he said gleefully. They're not his friends any longer. We all thought that Potter and Ron Weasley were close, but it turns out that Potter and the Weasley girl were fooling us all. I heard that. His voice abruptly cut off. His ugly smirk faded off his face once he realized that he'd been silenced. He finally realized that he was surrounded by people with wands who had every interest in hexing him in the next week. And judging by the look on all the Weasleys' faces, they were a word away from not caring the slightest that the minister was around. Control your son, he told Lucius Malfoy coldly. You just did underage magic, Lucius pointed out, though he had paled considerably. Right in front of the Minister of Magic. How are you in any position to make threats? Actually, I'm the one that silenced Draco, Sirius said easily. And I don't need to make threats, Harry said. I'm disappointed in you, Sissy, Sirius continued. His tone was still pleasant. You've managed to raise a very stupid son. I only hope it doesn't get him into trouble one day. My son is not. Back off, Harry said. He and Lucius Malfoy stared at each other for a long, intense moment. Harry was surprised to find that he had remained seated. He had better control of himself than he thought. He counted it as a good thing that he did not have his wand pointed directly at Lucius Malfoy's head. Malfoy broke the contact first, and Harry felt a thrill. He'd seen a bit of fear in the Death Eater's eyes. Lucius had learned a little early this time that Harry did not like to be messed with. Still, he felt an immense sense of relief when Ludo Bagman announced the beginning of the game. Don't think this is over, Potter, Lucius growled softly several minutes later. One more word, Harry whispered, and I'll tell everyone in this box that you were the one to plant the diary on Ginny Weasley. You might wriggle out of it with the minister, but the Weasleys already hate you and your son almost as much as they hate me. I wouldn't push them. You're just lucky that the older Weasleys were able to control their sons. Well, wasn't that interesting? Sirius said. The game was over, and so was the Quidditch match. As they approached their tent, Harry's body began to relax. For the most part, I had quite a lot of fun, Sirius admitted. The match was pretty exciting, too. You were brilliant, Harry said, grinning. Did you see the looks on their faces? Narcissa was trembling. She was so afraid of what you would say next. Did you take the silencing charm off Draco? Sirius shrugged. How could I possibly remember such a small detail like that? Harry laughed. Sometimes I see a lot of your father in you, Sirius said. Not always. You're just as much like Lily. But I think James would have been very proud of you tonight. Not only did you make a Death Eater back off, but you did it right under the minister's nose. Do you really think he'd be proud of me? Harry asked. Despite everything, he felt like he actually was 14 years old for a moment. That's a silly question, Sirius told him. Your dad was a bit arrogant, and he'd be almost intolerable knowing that he had a son like you. Harry felt warmth spread from his toes to his fingers, as if he had just consumed large quantities of chocolate after meeting a Dementor or two. He'd started to wonder if his parents would worry about how hard he'd become after seeing nearly everyone he loved die. I'm going to see them, you know, Harry said. He lowered his voice, even though he rather doubted that anyone could hear them over the din the Irish were making. What do you mean? Sirius asked, perplexed. How could you see them? Priori incanitum, Harry said. They're going to come out of his wand. It won't really be them. Just shades. But they'll be able to talk and everything. I'm not sure if I'm really looking forward to it, or if I'm dreading it. Understandable. Sirius threw his arm over Harry's shoulders. I would try not to worry about it too much, Harry. I know you're going to, but there are a lot of things that are going to happen between now and then. And I want you to promise me something. What? Harry asked. Try to let loose a little, Sirius said. Have fun with your friends. You've been given an amazing chance to build new memories with them. There's not much I wouldn't give to have another 7 years at Hogwarts with your father, mother, and Moony. He added hastily when he saw the look on Harry's face, that I'm going to do what you did. Too much would go wrong. I'm afraid that too much has already gone wrong here, Harry confessed after a moment. What if I've already screwed something up? Wormtail, it's a pretty wild fluke that he's where he's supposed to be. I get chills just thinking about how close we were to losing everything. And about my friends. He paused. Yes, Sirius said. Harry took a deep breath. I'm going to tell Neville and Hermione what's going on as soon as the Goblet of Fire is lit, the night before my name comes out of it. I don't think it's wrong to think that I might lose them. We have been deceiving them for 3 years. I don't think you understand it from our perspective, Sirius said quietly. What you and Ron and Ginny have done. I had never heard of that kind of bravery and that kind of love. I know what you three had to go through to get back here. When our only other choice was to stay and live out the rest of our lives alone, it was the easiest decision in the world, Harry said. 2 surprises awaited Harry that night. The first surprise happened when they finally made it to their tent and saw who had joined Luna and her father. Ron, Ginny, and Hermione sat around the campfire, flushed with laughter. Harry stood in the shadows for a moment, just watching them, drinking them in. Harry, Hermione said. She was shocked to see him once he'd stepped toward him. Hello again, he beamed. How'd you get away? Mum and Dad were a bit flustered, Ron said. Luna found us after the match and told them that her dad wanted to give them a bit of a break. Once they'd made him promise to keep us out of trouble, Ginny added, they agreed readily enough. It helped that the Malfoys are staying near us, Ron said. I think they wanted us as far away from them as possible. Zeno, Sirius greeted the older man with exuberance, even though he had just met the man today. Should we finish our interview? Give the kids a bit of privacy? I don't know. We'll be right over there, Sirius said. Nothing will happen to them. I'll make sure of that. Hermione looked extremely confused. Luna, did you know that Harry was staying right next to you? Yes, Luna said. That's why I didn't tell the Weasleys. And a good thing, too, Ron rolled his eyes. He stood up from a log that had been enchanted to be a most comfortable chair. Harry hugged him. He did this partly because he was happy to see his friend without Mr. and Mrs. Weasley or his brothers hovering over him, and partly because he had to tell him something. Scar hurt. Wormtail with Voldemort, Harry murmured. Ron jerked back. Harry shrugged. Hey, Ginny, he said. She had grown even more beautiful than the last he'd seen her, not counting the little glimpses he'd had of her during the World Cup. The firelight played in her hair. Hey, Harry, she said. Are you sure this is wise? Hermione asked. Not that I don't like. It's good to have you here, Harry. But if the Weasleys saw us... They won't, Ron said comfortably. He leaned down and whispered something. Harry thought he might know what. In Ginny's ear. His suspicions were confirmed when she sat up, instantly alert. Harry gave her a very small nod. Don't worry, Hermione, Luna said. No one can separate Arthur, Guinevere, and Lancelot. Thank you, Luna, Hermione said waspishly. But the Weasleys were very upset today. Ron laughed. I forgot we didn't tell you yet. It isn't funny, Ron. Hermione said, I thought people were going to start killing each other. Sirius Black took the Malfoys down several pegs, Ginny explained. And then Harry took them down all the way. All four quickly explained what had happened in the top box before the match began. You should have seen the look on Lucius Malfoy's face, Ron chortled. He was dead afraid of Harry and Sirius. He didn't say anything at all, and left even before we did. That doesn't change the fact that your family was just as angry with Harry as they were with the Malfoys, Hermione said. They think you told everyone about, you know. Stupid of them, Ginny said sourly. Let me guess, Harry said. The twins didn't automatically confess that they'd told everyone about it in their quest to make me a pariah? No, Ron said shortly. Anything else? Harry asked. Hermione shook her head. We came up on Luna and her dad right after that. Let's change the subject, Ginny said suddenly. She had obviously caught the drift of Harry's quickly turning mood. It's been so long since we've all had a conversation together. Let's not ruin it. Harry climbed into the tent he was sharing with Sirius much later that evening after they had walked Ron, Ginny, and Hermione back to the Weasleys' camp with Zeno and Luna. He and Sirius had let them go on the last little bit without them. He'd done his best to create one of those bright moments Sirius had spoken of earlier. He hadn't been able to truly relax, however, worried as he had been about the Death Eaters attacking the Muggles again. He kept alert, but he needn't have worried. Harry awoke the next morning to discover that all had been quiet throughout the night. No Death Eaters having a reunion. No dark mark in the sky, terrifying everyone out of their wits. The second surprise. His most pressing worry for the moment was whether or not. Harry guessed not, as she had only grown more suspicious in the last few months. What had happened in the top box had only fanned her desire to uncover their secret. Hermione would be willing to wait another 2 months for Harry's, Ron's, and Ginny's confession.
Hello there, Harry Potter fans. Welcome back to our page. We've got a new chapter for Backward with Purpose, Part 1, Always and Always by Dead Woodpecker. And here we've got Chapter 20, The Hardest Task.
Chapter 20, The Hardest Task. Chapter text. Harry stared at Barty Crouch, disguised as Alastor Moody, and tried to pretend that he did not, in fact, have any idea that he was a Death Eater whose main goal was to offer Harry up to Voldemort. Harry had gotten used to being at the top of the list of most likely people to be murdered, so this did not bother him as much as Ginny seemed to think it should. What shook his self-control was the fact that Neville Longbottom was seated next to him, and Barty Crouch had helped to torture Neville's mother and father into insanity. It did not help that he now had to sit back and allow the Death Eater to place his classmates under the Imperius curse. It made him feel slightly ill. Would have been funny the first time, without knowledge and maturity. Now was ominous. Not that Crouch betrayed anything. He did not show the slightest sign of glee or enjoyment. No, he had nailed the role of Mad-Eye Moody. Gruff, paranoid, and no nonsense. Still, Harry took a deep breath when Neville performed astounding acrobatics. Ron was equally silent. Harry could tell by the set of his jaw, even from across the classroom, that he had the same disturbing thoughts running through his mind. Harry wondered if Ron and Ginny had hated the sight of Scabbers and Harry in the same room. Did they have that same sick feeling that Harry had now, watching Crouch control Neville? He suspected that they had. Your turn, Potter, Crouch called. He took a swig from his flask. Just in case, Harry tightened his obfuscamancy shield. He had no idea whether or not Crouch was a legilimens. It didn't seem likely, but he was not about to take his chances. He had spent the last 2.5 years creating and perfecting the difficult bit of mind magic, and he was finally satisfied that the spiral was complete. Even better, Snape and Dumbledore were satisfied. Ron and Ginny still had a ways to go, but as they would not be meeting Voldemort face-to-face in a few months, they had more leeway than Harry. The delicious feeling of not having worries or cares engulfed Harry. The Imperius curse was not one that he had experienced regularly, thank Merlin. It seemed to engulf him in a warm blanket. But that warm blanket would smother Harry if he allowed it to. Jump on the desk, said the small voice in his head, and Harry swatted Crouch's control away. He may not be good at casting that particular curse, but his mind was stronger than Crouch's. "Well done, Potter," Crouch said loudly. "Did you see that? He fought it off." Harry managed a guileless smile. "Didn't feel much like jumping on the desk," he said. "I didn't know how I did it." "But you did," Crouch said. "He was a very good actor," Harry thought. 20 points to Gryffindor. Everyone, you watch Potter. You can watch him fight it. Just look at his eyes. Hermione left Ron's side, where she was spending more and more time, much to Ron's delight, immediately after class. Harry stifled a groan. He loved Hermione like a sister, but she was absolutely relentless. And despite the fact that she was also suspicious of Ron and Ginny, Harry had the full brunt of her rather rabid thirst for knowledge. "That was excellent, Harry," she said warmly. Harry eyed her warily. "Thanks," he said. He had not forgotten how she had cornered him after breakfast. He would not enjoy a repeat performance. Just a few more weeks, he thought with both relief and dread. As soon as Dumbledore confirmed that the Goblet of Fire had indeed been confunded, and that the ripple effect had not extended to changing Voldemort's plans, they would tell them. "I'm pretty impressed," she added. She had that look in her eyes again. She was about to ask a leading question. Harry tried to head it off. "It's not that big a deal, really," he said evasively. "You ended up throwing it off. So did Ron. And Neville did, too. Not as quickly as you," Hermione pointed out. "Harry," she said in a very low voice, "you haven't been practicing throwing it off, have you?" "No," Harry said quietly. "But, ever since Pettigrew did it on me, I've been a little afraid of it. Seems a little funny, that's all," she said. "Pettigrew had you fully under, and it didn't break until, what was it you said? He got distracted." "Yep," Harry said. "Maybe I'm just stronger now." "But how did you get stronger?" she pressed. Not for the first time, Harry thought that Hermione Granger was too smart for her own good. "Hermione, please," he said. "My head hurts and I'm starving. Can we talk about this later?" She looked as frustrated as he felt. They were standing in a very crowded corridor with students streaming past them. It was not until Dennis Creevey jostled her accidentally and knocked the books out of her hands that she gave it up. Harry's heart was hammering inside his chest as he waited, alone, in the room of requirement. This was it. This was the moment. He had only minutes left before Ron and Ginny, and then Hermione, Luna, and Neville would come in through that door. There was a roaring fire in the hearth, yet his fingers trembled. He'd almost put it off for too long. Hermione had grown increasingly ill-tempered with him. Just last night, she'd refused to help him with his ancient runes homework. She was also speaking in secret to Neville. Harry knew. He felt a sort of morbid curiosity about what they were speculating about. The door cracked open and Ginny and Ron shuffled in, looking as sick as Harry felt. He wrapped his arms around Ginny. "Do you have the book?" he asked. She nodded and withdrew the copy of Memories Unbound that they had bought for her for Christmas during their first year. It seemed almost unreal that they were already in their fourth and about to tell Hermione and Neville everything. "Is it just me?" Harry murmured. "Or is time going by much faster this time around?" Ron shook his head. "I can't believe we're here already. By this time next year, Voldemort will be wreaking havoc," Harry finished for him. Ginny rested her head against his chest, and he stroked her hair. One good thing that came from this year. He and Ginny, by some miracle of their schedules, had much more time alone together. "All right, Ron?" Harry asked. He had the most to lose of all of them if this went badly. "Stop thinking about that," he ordered himself. Ron shrugged. "I'm more worried about this than I am about you facing Voldemort in that graveyard." "Thanks," Harry said dryly, though he understood. "That's a done deal," Ron said. "He takes your blood." "Tortures me a bit," Harry interjected. "Then challenges you to a duel." Ron continued as if Harry had not spoken. "You do your Expelliarmus bit, and then you scamper." "You're right," Harry nodded, grinning. "That'll be much easier than this. If you two don't shut up about that right now," Ginny warned. "Although I do see your point," she added after a moment. Harry kissed the top of her head, knowing that she'd only said something because she'd felt like she'd had to. Her humor was just as black as theirs at times. "So," Ron said, "just to clarify, we're still going with full disclosure." "Yes," Harry confirmed, "except for the fact that I'm a Horcrux too. What if Hermione figures it out?" Ginny asked. "She didn't last time," Harry shrugged. Would that she had. And if she does, fine. But I'm not going to tell them. And I'd rather you two didn't either. I didn't even tell Sirius and Remus, remember? All right, Ginny murmured. All right, Ginny murmured. Dumbledore's in his office, Harry told them. He's ensured that he'll be alone for the rest of the night, just in case we need him. And Snape has the twins occupied, Ron interrupted. We know. Harry let go of Ginny and paced the floor. The room of requirement produced a thick, old carpet just for this purpose. It had faded patches, and Harry suspected that he was not the first to pace on it, his feet showing his worry of their own accord. His stomach clenched whenever he made a turn. We're here, Luna said brightly, and Harry's stomach made a steep dive, and he felt like he had the times he had fallen off his broomstick. Neville, Luna, and Hermione had obviously come together. They filed in, one right after another. Luna already knows, Harry told himself. At least we don't have to worry about her. Hi, Harry, Ron, and Ginny chorused weakly. Hello, Neville said, looking around curiously at the room. Instead of a large, empty area that they made use of to practice dueling and other spells, a series of cozy armchairs sat next to the fire. What's all this? Hermione knit her brows together. I thought we were practicing tonight, and we're all together. Harry licked his lips and nervously flattened his hair. Well, let's sit down. Yes, Ron said enthusiastically. He grabbed Hermione's hand and pulled her to the nearest chair. Funnily enough, Harry thought, it was just large enough for the both of them. Great idea, Harry, Ginny said. Once they were all seated, Luna upon a Japanese-style mat, Harry stared around at them. His throat had closed up tightly, and he could not think of anything to say. What's this all about? Hermione asked, breaking the silence. Are you going to tell us your secret now? Neville's mouth was slightly open. Yes, Harry said, relieved. Ginny beside him nodded. Hermione immediately sat upright. You mean that after all these months of dodging us, you're finally going to tell us? Why now? Why not then? Didn't think you were ready, Ron said quietly. Hermione bristled at this and turned to glare at him, but something in his eyes must have changed her mind, for she seemed to change her mind. Is it really that big of a secret? She asked uncertainly. Huge, Harry said. The biggest, Ginny said. There was another long moment of silence. Neville broke it this time by saying, Would it help you if we asked questions? I have a list, Hermione said. She pulled a piece of parchment out of her bag. I'm glad I had this with me. I almost dropped the bag off in the common room. Harry eyed it warily. That looks a bit long, Ron said. He squinted at it. And tiny writing. Neville and I have been working on it for a while, Hermione said defensively. We started it in the hospital wing right after the Dementors attacked us. Which brings us to the first question. How did you, Ron, know that Pettigrew was on the grounds? That's easy, Ron said, relieved. I have this thing called the Marauder's Map. It shows everyone on Hogwarts grounds and where they are. I nicked it from Fred and George a while ago. Hermione nodded. That makes sense, although I wouldn't expect them to be able to use such a complex enchantment. Fred and George are smarter than people give them credit for, Ginny told her. And besides, Harry said, it wasn't them that enchanted it. The Marauders went to school in the 70s. One of them was my dad, in fact. The others were Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew. They went by Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. I have a question, Neville said. Are you a seer, Harry? A real one, not like Professor Trelawney. Definitely not, Harry answered. Although, you'll be interested to know, she was the one who made the prophecy about Voldemort and me. Do you know what the prophecy says? Hermione asked. All of it. Harry, Ron, and Ginny stared at each other. Hermione, Ginny said. Neville, Luna, this is pretty much your last chance to back out. From here on out, we're going to tell you everything. Are you sure you want to hear about it? It's a big responsibility, Harry said. There's a reason why we haven't told you before. Hermione and Neville both took a deep breath and nodded. Luna fiddled with her hair. Harry took this to mean that she understood. Harry wondered if they knew that their lives were probably going to change drastically. Maybe not physically, but Harry had a feeling that Hermione's worldview was going to be rocked when they told her that they had done the almost impossible. He was glad that Hermione had softened toward Luna. The fact that Luna had an intuitive grasp of ancient runes helped. Luna would help her. Do you miss having a crown? Luna said suddenly. What? Harry said blankly. You know, she said, you aren't a king anymore. Do you miss it? Ginny laughed first, then Ron and Harry. When Luna started to giggle as well, Harry realized that this was why she'd done it. She wanted them to laugh. Some of the knots that had formed in his belly uncoiled, and he felt a great affection for Luna. Neville and Hermione joined them, albeit uncertainly, and Harry thought that things just might turn out to be all right. Next question, Ron said. You didn't answer mine, Hermione pointed out. I know the whole prophecy, Harry said, and it's basically this. I got to defeat Voldemort, and I'm the only one who can do it. Hermione, Luna, and Neville stared at him, eyes wide. Oh, Harry, Hermione whispered. Are you scared? Not for the reason you think, Harry answered honestly. I know how Voldemort can be defeated. Don't, Harry ordered when Hermione, Neville, and Luna flinched at the name. Be afraid of his name. Anyway, I know what we got to do. What I'm afraid of is how many people are going to die before he can be stopped. That's why you've been training us, Neville said slowly. I know you told me that last year, but feels more real now. Ron asked. I know the feeling, mate, believe me. Why me, though? Neville asked. I'm getting better, but you just need more confidence, Ginny said. And try to get a better wand. I know it was your dad's, but wands always work better when they've chosen you. And we'll work hard this year. You'll start learning more spells. Harry thought of the time when all 6 of them had gone on an ill-advised rescue mission to the Ministry of Magic. He remembered thinking that of all the members of Dumbledore's army, he wouldn't have chosen Ginny, Neville, and Luna to come with them. But Harry had a clearer vision of them now, and he knew exactly what he needed to say. Listen, he said. He stared at Hermione, Neville, and Luna in turn. Trust me when I say that of all the students at Hogwarts, I need your help the most. I can't do this alone. You have a choice, you know. I'm not going to force you to help. You have a choice too, Luna said unexpectedly. You could, I don't know, move to Australia or Russia, Neville said. But you won't, Hermione smiled. And we won't either. I hope you don't regret saying that, Harry said quietly. I hope we have a few years yet, Hermione said. We don't know when he'll return. Yes, we do, Ron interrupted, which is why we waited until now to tell you. We know for sure when he's coming back. Thank Merlin. He's coming back on June 24th, Ginny said. My name, Harry said, is going to come out of the goblet of fire tomorrow. I'll go through all the tasks, and when I win, the cup is going to turn out to be a port key. It's going to take me to a graveyard, where Voldemort is going to be resurrected. What? Hermione said. How do you, if that really is the case? Why aren't you going to stop it? Stop it, Ron asked. We're not going to stop it. We've actively worked to this point. And trust me, it hasn't been easy. I can't believe. Are you telling me that you want you-know-who to come back? He has to, Ginny said simply. Otherwise, he'll never be defeated. He'll always be a threat. Explain, Neville said, his jaw clenched. Voldemort has Horcruxes, Ron said. He didn't die when his curse rebounded off of Harry because of them. He stuck bits of his soul. Believe me, you don't want to know how he did this, into a bunch of different physical objects. They keep him immortal, Ginny said. Before Voldemort can be destroyed completely, Harry added, they've got to be destroyed too. Otherwise, he'll always be around, lurking in the dark corners of the world, waiting for someone to give him back a body. Pettigrew is that someone. We wanted Voldemort's return to be on our terms, or as much as it can be, Ron said. He fiddled with his wand and jiggled his legs. Any minute now, Hermione, or possibly Neville, was going to ask how they could know all of this. Voldemort's a right nasty bastard. We're the last ones to say that this is going to be at all easy. Neville looked sick. That reminds me of the stories my other gran, my mum's mum, used to tell me about Koshich the Deathless. He was a Russian wizard who hid his death inside a needle, which was inside a fish, which was inside a bird. You get the point. And it's sort of like that. He's got his death hidden. Yeah, I guess, Harry, who had not really understood the historical reference, said. Except that there's more than one. Harry, don't you think you should tell someone about this? Hermione said nervously. Dumbledore could. Dumbledore knows, Ginny assured her. So does Snape, Ron said. We told them the first day of classes. Remember how you didn't think we were under the confuzzle draft? We needed to get to them without causing suspicion. But the two of you were 11 years old then. Hermione said, "How could you possibly have known all of this?" Harry was living with muggles. Harry's palms were sweating. He wiped them off on his robes. We knew because we've been here before. We've lived this before. What? Neville said blankly. It's true, Luna spoke up. Arthur, Lancelot, and Guinevere traveled from the future. Luna, Hermione said. That's completely impossible, and you know it. Ginny pulled out memories unbound from underneath her robes. With shaking fingers, she turned it to the correct page and handed it to Hermione. Hermione took it automatically and stared down at it, bewildered. No, she shook her head. No way is this possible. It is, Ron said gently. Trust us. What is it? Neville asked. The Tears of Merlin, Hermione said. They're claiming that they used the Tears of Merlin to send their memories back. It's a fairy tale they couldn't possibly have. We did, Harry said. Neville, didn't you wonder why we were so angry at Lockhart for obliviating me? Ron thought he'd erased all the memories I had of the future. Even if this is true, Hermione said icily. Her expression was frozen in a horrible grimace of disbelief. She'd crossed her arms and legs so tightly that Harry fully expected to hear her bones snap. You just spent the last half hour telling us that you know how to defeat you-know-who. If you really do know how to do it, why didn't you just, I don't know, do it in your own time? Apparently, she thought her logic infallible, for she now looked a little smug as well as angry. We did, Harry said. We defeated Voldemort. Harry defeated him. Ron interjected. Then why come back? Neville asked. He was not as rigid as Hermione was, but he was still skeptical. They didn't come back, Neville, Hermione said. I can't believe that you said you were finally going to tell us the truth, and now you're telling us a bunch of lies. We aren't lying, Ginny said. Even if the Tears of Merlin is true, I can't imagine why you'd be that desperate. Oh yeah, Ron said loudly. Maybe you should ask yourself why you aren't with us. Everyone in this room, practically every damn person in this castle, died fighting Voldemort. You, Neville, Luna, our entire family. I'm not going to give you the whole damn list of everyone who died. We don't have the time. Try to picture everyone you loved dead. Hermione, Ginny said, except for 2 other people. And yes, you're absolutely right. We are desperate. The price we paid to defeat Voldemort for the first time was far too high, Harry said. We lived like ghosts for 3 years after we lost all of you. Until Harry had the idea to go back in time, Ron said. Which I actually got from you, Harry said to Hermione. She raised her eyebrows. She'd softened a bit, but she was far from believing their wild tale. But wasn't I supposed to be dead? You were, Harry said. But I was thinking of you, and I remembered your time turner, the one you used to get to all your classes last year. How did you know Dash? I told you, Harry said impatiently. I've lived this before. So, I had this wild idea that we could go back and change things. We didn't listen to him at first, Ginny put in. We knew a time turner wouldn't work, and we told him that, but Harry wouldn't let it go. And then I remembered what you had said about time traveling and how time turners are the most reliable way. Which they are, Hermione admitted grudgingly. But mostly because the other ways are supposed to be impossible. Are still most likely impossible. Hermione, Neville said suddenly. I think they're telling the truth. Look, it explains everything. How they knew about the basilisk, why they were so hacked off at Lockhart, why they're so insistent that we train. Just today you were certain that they were seers. Hermione said, you didn't think that it could be explained any other way. You've changed your mind awfully quickly. It made sense, Neville admitted. But now I know the truth, and it's kind of similar, I guess. They weren't just foreseeing, they've lived through all this before. It's true, Luna said. Hermione looked at her scathingly. You'll believe anything, but she interrupted herself, eyes widening. You could tell her, but you couldn't tell us. She guessed, Ron said, smiling a little. She knew right away. Hermione paused for a moment. The minutes ticked by, and Harry watched her apprehensively. He could practically feel her thinking. Her eyes were vague, though she kept narrowing them. He knew that she was not trying to put the pieces together. She was trying to find some argument that would shatter what they were saying. Harry could not pretend that he had not expected this. Once, Neville opened his mouth to speak, but she held her hand up sharply. She looked at them triumphantly. "All right," she said slowly. "If this is true, if you really are from the future, don't you think that it was a bit stupid of you to alienate the Weasleys again? They've made it awfully difficult for you to carry out your plans. And before you say that you and Ginny didn't get caught, last time, Ron told me ages ago that your parents were suspicious of you even before that. Why didn't you, I don't know, work a little harder to gain their trust?" "First of all," Harry said, "Ginny and I wouldn't have been caught together, at least not until after my 6th year, because we didn't get together until then. This time it's different. We've been in love for years and years now. And second of all," Ginny said quietly, "my parents loved Harry very much. He was like another son to them. Sometimes I think they liked him more than they liked me." Ron smiled a little sadly. "That's ludicrous," Hermione said flatly. "There's no way that people would change that much." "But they haven't really changed," Harry said. "They're protective of their children, they're loving and kind, and they'll do anything to keep those they love from harm. It's just, I don't fall under that category anymore. And there are 2 reasons for that, I think," Ron said. "The first, do you remember that stupid article? 'Don't trust Harry Potter. He might be some kind of baby Dark Lord, blah, blah, blah.' There was nothing like it where we came from. Mom and Dad had no reason whatsoever to worry. And so they were able to get to know Harry without worrying that he was going to go dark. And the second reason," Ginny said, "is that they've seen the changes in us. Dad said that on more than one occasion, and so has Mom. They think it's Harry's influence, and they're afraid that if we continue to be around him, we'll change even more. They're afraid that if Harry goes dark, so will we." "Not that that would happen," Harry said. Hermione stared at each of them in turn. She'd relaxed somewhat, and she looked utterly confused. Neville seemed to have taken the idea of the time travel better, but still, his brows were knit together as he stared at a point somewhere over Harry's left shoulder. "I'm sorry," Hermione said finally, "but I'm going to have to ask that you prove it. I just can't believe it without proof, and I have no idea how you're going to do so." "How about with a pensieve?" Ron asked. "We'll show you some of the memories we have." "And pensieves can't be hoodwinked," Hermione muttered to herself. She trailed off, and Harry could see that she was analyzing everything she knew about pensieves and objective memories. "All right," she said. "If you can actually show these memories you have inside a pensieve, then I'll have to believe you, mustn't I?" "Dumbledore's got one," Harry said immediately. "I could just ask him to." But before he could stand up and send a message by Patronus to Albus Dumbledore asking for his assistance, a pensieve and a small table appeared before them. "This is a pretty incredible room," Harry said. He wondered if the room of requirement had provided a completely different pensieve, or if the one in Dumbledore's office had suddenly gone on walkabout. He tapped his chin thoughtfully with his wand, and ducked when red sparks shot out of the end. He ended up giving Neville, Hermione, and Luna more memories than he had given Sirius and Remus. He put in the original prophecy as he had heard it in his 5th year in Dumbledore's office. He gave them a few bits from the original Dumbledore's army, including when Neville had produced his corporeal Patronus, and he also put in a few battles that they had successfully had against Death Eaters. He then skipped a large portion of time and showed them a brief picture of the aftermath of the battle, though he was careful not to show them their bodies, and the time Harry, Ron, and Ginny had decided to come back. Ron and Ginny also walked over to add their own memories, though Harry had no idea what they might be. It felt very solemn, almost like a ceremony, and Hermione, Neville, and even Luna watched them with a soberness that belied their age and Luna's nature. "This may take a while," Harry said quietly. Hermione gave them a long, searching look. She didn't say anything, but took a deep breath and dove into the memories. Neville and Luna followed immediately after. "What memories did you give them?" Harry asked as soon as the other 3 had disappeared. Ron shuffled his feet. "I wanted to show her that Mum and Dad loved you," he said. "She seemed to find it pretty impossible to believe, so I showed them all some quiet, happy times that we had," Ginny said, "without being threatened by the war and Voldemort. And I showed them what really happened to Pettigrew. They were going to ask anyway." Harry sat, and Ginny immediately plopped down into his lap. He put his arms around her middle, and she leaned up against him. Ron took Harry's place and began to pace the carpet, looking at the pensieve and the swirling, silver substance inside it every few seconds. The dread he'd felt for what seemed like months began to seep away. There was no turning back now. Harry could not take back the words he had said, the truths he had told, or the memories he had given. It was done. It seemed to take a very long time before Hermione, Neville, and Luna emerged from the pensieve. Even Luna, who had known for quite a long time, looked ashen-faced. Harry could not tell what they were thinking. He could not even begin to guess what was going through Hermione's mind. "It's real," Hermione finally whispered. She burst into tears. Ron was at her side in seconds, and he hugged her. She buried her face and kept sobbing. Harry had no idea why this was so upsetting to her. He thought she'd be screaming at them for lying to her for these past few years. "I still don't really understand," Neville said. "I kind of hope that I never have to." "Me too," Harry said fervently. "Hermione, are you all right?" "Of course I'm not all right." Hermione pulled back from Ron. "I thought you were lying." "I didn't." "Doesn't matter," Ron said. "You believe us now." Harry thought she might be a little afraid of the battles in her future. He did not blame her. "You don't have to fight, you know. Any of you. I know. Believe me, I know how dangerous it might get. And if you think you might want to step back," Ginny said, "we certainly won't blame you." "I think a Raxbird has gotten a hold of Guinevere and Arthur," Luna said dreamily. "Possibly several of them." Hermione mopped her eyes on her robes. "You know what, Luna? I think you're right about that." Harry gaped at her. "They're being pretty stupid," Neville agreed. Harry said. "Listen." "No, you listen," Hermione said. "Obviously, you need a few things explained to you. You came back for us." Harry had heard this before from Sirius, but he didn't know why everyone was so shocked and grateful. He was dragging them one by one into a war with the most evil wizard who had ever lived. He needed their help. All of them. They were putting themselves at risk. It was certain that they would be placing themselves in mortal peril. He was going to do everything he could to save them all, but that did not change the fact that they could die again. He told them this. "We realize that, Harry," Hermione said. "You just shown us, but you could have stayed in the future. Instead, you came back for us. We'd do it again in a heartbeat," Ron informed her. He was making absolutely no effort to disguise how much he loved her. "So don't feel like you owe us or something. That's not how love and friendship work," Hermione said softly. "I suppose it isn't," Ginny said. Harry still did not quite understand it, but he heaved a huge, heartfelt sigh of relief anyway. "Thank you," he said. "We thought you'd be angry," Ron said, still staring at Hermione. "Don't be thick, Ron," Hermione said waspishly. "Now, Harry, do you know what this terrible power is?" Harry shook his head. "Not really. At least I don't think I do." She nodded. "All right, I'll start doing research immediately. While we," she indicated herself, Neville, and Luna, "are practicing, you will too. All three of you," she said sternly. Harry, Ron, and Ginny grinned at the bossy tone in her voice. "We can order more books from Flourish and Blots, or maybe we can get some out of the restricted section in the library. And you're going to keep learning spells until we've got the right one." Harry said. "You wanted my help," Hermione said impatiently. "And you just said that you don't know what the terrible power is. Maybe you've got to look for it." "She's probably right," Ginny said. Hermione's face was alight with excitement. "And Dumbledore will probably have some ideas." Despite himself, Harry could not help but feel a small, unfurling hope. Maybe there was something like the Hallows, a safe way to ensure his survival. He would never, ever make a Horcrux, but he was the last person to say that he knew everything about magic. He might not have to die. "I've got them counted, Hagrid," Charlie Weasley said warningly. Harry could not blame him. Hagrid was eyeing the dragon eggs with longing. He choked back a laugh. The disillusionment charm made him invisible and did not cause the others around him to go deaf. Hagrid groaned. He tore his eyes away from the large eggs, and instead turned to look at the Hungarian horntail. "She's a real beauty," he said softly. Charlie nodded. "We almost didn't bring her, you know. We didn't know there would be a fourth contestant. Say, Hagrid, are you still friends with Harry Potter?" Hagrid's chest swelled out. He said importantly. See, I'm at least once a week. He likes to come by for tea. Do you know why he put his name in the goblet of fire? Charlie asked. Harry began to look for escape routes. It had been very stupid of him to think that his name would not come up. Was it just for attention, do you think? He said he didn't do it, Hagrid said. Charlie eyed him skeptically. You really believe that? I think you might be the only one. Everyone's been yammering about it since Rita Skeeter's article came out. Harry felt a swell of fury when he remembered that article. He'd refused to have any sort of interview with her, hoping that she would not have enough fodder for a story. Instead, she made up facts and managed to paint him as some mad, attention-hungry little boy. Not only that, but she'd taken the opportunity to bring that first article up, the fact that he was a parcel-tongue, and the series of adventures he'd had during the last few years. Fortunately, she'd left out any mention of the Weasleys, though Harry feared that it was only a matter of time. If Hermione's plan didn't work. Rita Skeeter's a real cow, Hagrid said. Harry's a good boy, and if he says he didn't put his name in the goblet of fire, then he didn't. I'm not so sure about him being a good boy, Hagrid, Charlie said. You're a teacher. You must know what happened with him and my little sister. Didn't say he was perfect, Hagrid said. Maybe he lost his head and did something stupid, but I don't think he meant to hurt Ginny. And I have to say it's right sad to see Harry without Ron. They used to be as thick as thieves. Mum and Dad have other concerns, and I think they might be valid, Charlie said. Hagrid, aren't you at all worried about how Potter might turn out? Nah, Hagrid said immediately. Harry was poised on the verge of fleeing, and yet wanted to hear Hagrid defend him. He listened closely, suspecting that Hagrid had forgotten that Harry was there. Harry Don have an evil bone in his body. You sound like Percy, Charlie said. But Mum and Dad reckon that they don't want Ron and Ginny anywhere near him if he exhibits his terrible power. I think your Mum and Dad need to remember who it was that went into the Chamber of Secrets and saved their daughter, Hagrid said stubbornly. They remember that perfectly well, Charlie said. But that doesn't mean that they have to allow Harry to do whatever he wants with Ginny. Harry did not feel the need to listen anymore. He walked quietly back through the forest and up to the castle. Once he caught himself dwelling on the conversation too much, he pushed it firmly away. He'd decided a while ago that he could not allow his feelings to cloud his judgment, and he had come far, far too close to jumping on Charlie and dragging him to the nearest pensive and showing him exactly why he was to be trusted. He focused instead upon the upcoming task. He was reasonably confident, at least he wasn't nearly paralyzed with fear as he had been last time, that he would manage to get past the dragon. He'd been practicing on his firebolt every day for the last several months, after all, and his flying skills were still with him. He'd been toying with using some of the new spells in his arsenal that Hermione had insisted he learn, but thought it best to go with what he knew would work. He finally climbed into his bed that night, utterly exhausted. It was past midnight, and not only had he gone with Hagrid to take a look at the dragons, but he'd spent the 3 hours prior in the Room of Requirement learning a particularly difficult charm that turned a section of the ground into quicksand, presumably to be done under a Death Eater's feet, but it had been Ron that he'd been practicing on. Harry was certain that it had nothing whatsoever to do with any terrible power that he might have, but it was a handy spell to know. The next few days sped by, much to Harry's relief. He'd managed to warn Cedric Diggory about the dragons without Crouch listening in. His habit of using the disillusionment charm outside of class, the heckling from the other students was just as bad this time around, had also served to allow him to avoid the Death Eater's help. Are you nervous? Hermione whispered at breakfast on the day of the task. Harry took the time to consider her question. Muffliato, he said, once he decided to go with the truth. About the dragon? A little. Not as much as I was last time. I thought I was going to lose my head and start hexing people before I even got to the task. She laughed. But I'm a little nervous of things going sideways this year, Harry said. We're really lucky that we're at this point. Remember Pettigrew? Hard to forget almost having my soul sucked out by Dementors, Hermione said dryly. And Sirius is still planning to break into Azkaban and retrieve Rookwood, Harry said darkly. He doesn't seem to understand that I won't let him. That plan has about a 1 in a million chance in succeeding. Hermione didn't reply. It was with no small amount of indignation that Harry realized that she'd turned on him too. She was supposed to be the sensible one. She'd always try to talk them out of their mad schemes before. It was enough that Ron, Ginny, and Sirius had told them that he was being unreasonable just 2 days before. "Don't say a word," he warned her. "I wasn't going to," she said calmly. "Then, I found another few spells that you might find interesting. Iliotis causes a windstorm, and it looks remarkably difficult to break free of. Also, I found mention of a spell that will turn someone into smoke for a while." "I don't know," said Harry, though he was intrigued by the smoke idea. "Somehow I don't think that's terrible enough." She glared at him. "It's been less than a month, and you're already arguing with me? You promised you'd do this." I will," Harry assured her quickly. "I think the new hexes I've learned are going to be useful. Merlin knows that I need all the help I can get. If not with Voldemort, then with other Death Eaters. But how do you expect to find the terrible power if you don't look for it?" Hermione said severely. "We've got to try everything." Harry sighed. "You're right." He cast around for a change of topic, but found that he did not need one, as Professor McGonagall hurried over to him. He quickly ended the charm he'd cast that had ensured his and Hermione's privacy. "It's time, Potter," she said. She was rather pale. "You're to meet the champions now." Harry followed her out. He glanced back once to see Ron giving him the thumbs-up sign, and Ginny mouthing, "I love you." He winked at her. Thankfully, the twins were busy with their breakfasts and did not notice this. If Harry had wondered if he would draw the Hungarian horntail again, he soon found out that some things remained the same, and this was one of them. He glanced around at the slightly panicked look on Fleur's, Crumb's, and Cedric's faces. Their fear seemed to steady him. "You're going to be fine," he wanted to tell them. Especially Cedric, though Harry had different reasons for this besides just the dragon. "Air, you're staring at me." "Potter," Cedric's voice broke into his thoughts. As Harry had just been remembering the body he had taken back with him from the graveyard, this startled him. "Oh," Harry said, managing a weak grin. "Sorry, just nervous." "That's all right," he said, with a grimace that was obviously meant to be an answering smile. The minutes passed, and Harry found himself alone in the tent. "Summon the firebolt, get the golden egg. Summon the firebolt, get the golden egg. Summon the firebolt, get the golden egg," he chanted to himself. He gripped his wand with slightly sweaty palms. He walked into the enclosure that held the Hungarian horntail feeling, despite his pounding heart and damp hands, a lot more confident than he had. He did not hesitate, but thought as hard as he could about the firebolt in his dormitory and shouted, "Accio, firebolt." "Do you even know how to fly, Potter?" Malfoy shouted gleefully. The Slytherins all laughed appreciatively. Harry thought it might have been better when absolute fear had silenced the crowd. He kept his eyes fixed grimly at the point where his broom would appear. Moments later it had. He leapt onto it and pulled it up to a dizzying height, and then swooped back down toward the dragon. He flew around it in tight circles. Bursts of flame shot out at him, but he rolled and dived, drawing the horntail's attention from its eggs. The cheers were deafening, but Harry ignored them. "Come on," he thought as he sent his broom in a tight spiral, away from the fire. The horntail spread its wings, and Harry pushed the firebolt to its top speed. The ground rose up to meet him, and there it was, the golden egg. He grabbed it and made a sharp turn. "I didn't even get hurt this time," he thought, satisfied.
Hello there, Harry Potter fans. Welcome back to our page. We've got a new chapter for Backward with Purpose, Part 1, Always and Always by Dead Woodpecker. And here we've got Chapter 20, The Hardest Task.
Chapter 21, Interrogations. Chapter text. Harry's Ancient Runes homework was giving him a headache behind his right eye. It throbbed with increasing intensity. He did not know whether this was due to the effects of studying the ancient mode of writing, or the fact that he'd gotten very little sleep the night before. But they weren't just studying it anymore. As Professor Octavius had warned the year before, the class had grown increasingly difficult. Now, they were expected to use the spells they were learning in their other classes. Harry took off his glasses for a moment and rubbed his eyes with his knuckles. Why didn't Hermione tell us about this last time? He asked himself. He wished he'd had some inkling that the class would kick his arse. Not that it hasn't helped, he admitted grudgingly. Professor Octavius had told them that their skills would increase, and they had. In his weaker moments, Harry just wasn't sure if it was worth it. He groaned and stared down at the rune, cut into a block of wood again. It meant to summon, although, as Harry had learned, runes could mean several different things, and he was to practice his summoning charm while he looked at it. He did not really understand what this was to accomplish. His efforts thus far did not appear to do anything. He'd summoned a few bottles of ink, a cushion from Armchair, and Crookshanks with ease, but that was nothing new. And now he had to write half a foot about the supposed changes. Accio bag, Harry said wearily, pointing his wand to Hermione's overflowing bag. It zoomed toward him. Still haven't figured it out? Hermione said smugly. She'd had an epiphany about an hour ago, and had already filled an entire scroll. No, Harry said grumpily. There's no difference. Professor Octavius hates us. I'm certain of it. So does Trelawney, Neville groaned. Stupid dream diary. I never even remember my dreams. How does she expect me to make predictions? Just make them up, Harry advised him. Predict your own death every day. She'll give you full marks for that. Hermione looked scandalized. Don't listen to him, Neville. Besides, you should have dropped divination like I did. Way useless class. I couldn't, Neville said sadly. I didn't have another class to keep my schedule full. My Gran would kill me if she thought I wasn't taking my education seriously. I wish I'd taken ancient runes. No, you don't, Harry told him. The pain isn't worth it, trust me. That reminded him of that stupid rune the professor had made him draw at the end of last term. It felt like it was haunting him. He saw it in his dreams. He couldn't remember the dreams, but he woke up feeling strangely sad. Sometimes he had to blink away the vision of the lightning bolt nestled among other strange patterns. Muggle studies, then, Neville said. He lowered his voice. You could have warned me that divination would be terrible. We tried to get you to join us, Harry pointed out. You're the one who, never mind. I'll help you with the dream diary. I can't do anything about ancient runes, unless Hermione wants to tell me what it is she's figured out. He looked at her hopefully. She grinned and shook her head. I know it's awful of me, she said. She did not appear to care very much. Harry could not help but notice that her eyes sparkled with glee. But I'm rather enjoying the fact that there are some things you don't know. Thanks, Harry said sarcastically, though he smiled back at her. I'm glad you're enjoying yourself. He understood that, while Hermione was jesting a little, there was also truth to what she said. It had been Ron that had pointed this out long ago. If she's not angry that we lied to her, Ron said, she'll probably feel insecure that we're better at magic than she is. Harry glanced at Ginny uncertainly. It was true. When they sent their memories back, they would have all the skills and knowledge that they had accumulated over the years. Harry had not quite thought of it this way. He was so used to just assuming that Hermione was better than them, except in certain cases, that it hadn't even crossed his mind that this might no longer be the case. She'll still be smarter than we are, Ginny said. Intelligence and skill are two different things. They had planned to reassure Hermione at every turn that they needed her bright mind, but Harry's and Ron's difficulties with ancient runes did that for them. It also helped that Hermione almost daily witnessed the fact that Harry had a struggle to be able to perform the advanced defensive and offensive magic that she had ordered him to learn. Harry, Neville said, do you think I should die from falling out a window on the first day of the month, or the second? I'd work your way up to the bigger tragedies, Harry advised him. Start off a bit smaller, like maybe you'll have your leg cut off, or I don't know, get trapped in quicksand. We're practicing again tonight, Neville said. And Ron said he wants to learn that quicksand spell. See, Harry said, beaming. It might even be true. Neville laughed. They spent the next hour inventing increasingly unlikely tragedies. Harry could not fully enjoy it. Last time around, it had been him and Ron that had faked their way through an assignment. They weren't taking divination again, but still, it would be nice to have a laugh with his best mate and brother-in-law in the common room. Harry, Hermione nudged him. She was watching him carefully, and Harry suspected that she knew that his mood was shifting. I want you to watch something, she said. Harry said. He was glad that she did not try to talk about Ron and Ginny and the situation with the Weasleys. but felt like it was an explosion waiting to happen. She had become increasingly upset in the last few weeks, ever since the dragon task, and Harry sometimes thought that she would hex the twins. He glanced over at where Fred and George were sitting, heads together, obviously trying to figure out how to collect their gold from Ludo Bagman. Was she going to jinx them right now? Don't worry, Hermione rolled her eyes. I'm not going to do anything rash. But if they say one more thing, at least they're only talking about me putting my name in the goblet of fire, Harry said quietly. They aren't even being mean. This was perfectly true. Fred and George, though annoyed that Harry had gotten past the age line when they had sprouted beards, seemed to have regained some respect for Harry. Harry thought the scene with the Malfoys in the top box had something to do with it. George had broken the months of silence the other day to ask, stiffly, if he'd thought about joining the Quidditch team next year. Hermione snapped her fingers right in front of her eyes. Watch that ink bottle over there, she ordered. She then placed her wand on the table. She held up her own rune and focused on it. Accio ink. The small bottle jumped toward her a little and toppled over. Harry gaped. Wandless magic? Hermione smiled. You know it's possible. Of course Harry knew it was possible, but they weren't to learn even the basics of it until their 7th-year Newt level classes. Harry, who had left after his 6th year to hunt Horcruxes, had never learned it. So, he said, that's what knowing runes can do? You can learn to use magic without a wand. It's one of the reasons why runes are important to learn, Hermione said. But it's tremendously difficult, and the more difficult spells are almost impossible. From everything I've heard, wandless magic is useful, but only up to a point. You gotta really be focusing on it. Frankly, using a wand is so much easier. But if you're ever without a wand... Harry let his voice trail away. He began practicing again with renewed vigor. The first few times he tried it, nothing happened. The headache built again, but he ignored it. The third time he whispered, Accio ink, he saw it move. Very good, Harry, Hermione said. But you've got to write the essay now. We're meeting tonight, remember? I really wish I'd taken ancient runes, Neville said mournfully. Hermione shrugged. Like I said, spells are a lot stronger when you've got your wand with you. But still, Neville said, I reckon it's useful. Harry ignored the argument for the most part, though he found himself listening to Hermione and using her words to flesh out his essay. He thought she might suspect what he was doing, because whenever he stared down at it in silence, thinking about what he would write next, she would then tell Neville something else. I'm done, he finally said, so loudly that several first years near him jumped out of their seats. And about time, Hermione said, glancing down at her watch. We were supposed to meet, Luna 5 minutes ago. They packed up their bags and hurried through the portrait hole. Harry, who was always aware of when Ginny was in the room, was glad that she and Ron were somewhere else. Preoccupied though the twins were with their financial problems with Ludo Bagman, they would not have failed to notice all 5 of them leaving within minutes of each other. Harry paused for a moment to place the disillusionment charm on himself. Why do you still do that? Hermione asked waspishly. Habit, Harry shrugged. Ron, Ginny, and Luna were waiting for them by the time they skidded to a halt, threw open the door, and entered the room. Harry immediately focused on Ginny, and his eyes narrowed with concern. She was very pale, and her eyes were huge with worry, though he had no idea why. He looked over at Ron and felt his stomach drop. Ron looked just as afraid as Ginny. What's wrong? He said sharply. He broke the enchantment, so he would become visible again. Nothing, Ginny said shakily. She was lying. Is it your parents? Harry asked. Have they found out that you and Ron are still hanging out with me? No, Ron said. The tips of his ears were bright red. It's nothing, Harry. You're lying, Harry said incredulously. You think I can't tell when you're lying? I've known you for 20 years. Hermione, Neville, and Luna all looked at each other nervously. Harry's brows slammed together. The looks on their faces told him that whatever was wrong with Ron and Ginny, they knew it too. Listen, Ron said when Harry glowered at him. It isn't anything you need to worry about. Harry continued to glare at him for a few more moments. He had a strong suspicion that this was about the Weasleys. He glanced at Ginny and decided that whatever it was, he didn't particularly want to know, despite the fact that he'd promised himself repeatedly to stop worrying about it They kept cropping up in his thoughts. Like when he'd hex Malfoy in the corridors for tormenting a few first years, he'd wanted to have a laugh about it with the twins. And when he'd had a huge row with Sirius about breaking into Azkaban, he wanted to talk to Arthur and Molly. They would have helped him persuade Sirius that it was the wrong thing to do. It was too dangerous. "All right," Harry said finally. Ron looked uncertain, as if he could not believe that Harry would give a rest. "Good," he said. The silence swelled uncomfortably for a few moments, and Harry could see that Ron was casting around, trying to think of a way to break it. Good. Nice disillusionment charm. Why didn't you use your cloak, though? Just practicing?" "Shit. Harry said. He did not know how he could get away from this. He did not want to tell an outright lie to either Ron or Ginny. He felt bad enough for not telling them sooner. "Harry hasn't used his cloak all year," Neville said. Ron and Ginny had not been around him enough in the corridors to know this, which was why they had not noticed it missing. "He's been using that charm instead." "Why?" Ginny asked quietly. "If you have the cloak, why disillusion yourself?" Harry was cornered, and he knew it. He took a deep breath. "The cloak, it went missing at the end of last year. I left it on the shore of the lake when Pettigrew and the Dementors turned up, and when I went back for it, it wasn't there." "What?" Ron roared. "What are you talking about? It wasn't there." Hermione, Neville, and Luna all jumped back. They did not understand why this was of such vast importance. Harry couldn't even look at Ginny. "It wasn't there," Harry repeated. "Look at me, Harry Potter," Ginny said. She was furious. "When, exactly, were you going to tell us this?" He obviously wasn't going to. Ginny. Ron's face was bright red with anger. "Yes, I was," Harry said loudly. They both glared at him. I promise," he said. "Right," Ron said. "Although, I bet you were just waiting for us to work it out by ourselves. And I think I know when... "No," Harry yelled. "You've got it wrong. Then explain why this is the first I've heard of it." Ginny screamed at him. "If you were actually planning on telling us, you would have done it already." "I was hoping to tell you after I'd found it again," Harry said fiercely. It wasn't even fully a lie. He planned on looking for it, hoping he'd find it again. "What are you doing to find it?" Ron asked. "How are you going to find an invisibility cloak?" Ginny bit off. "It won't work correctly for anyone who isn't a Potter," Harry said. "You know that. So what were you planning to do?" Ron said scathingly. "Walk around with your wand out, saying Accio, invisibility, cloak all the time?" "No," Harry glared at him. "I think whoever conjured the Patronus that allowed Pettigrew to escape took it. It only makes sense. When we catch Pettigrew again, I plan on getting him to tell us who helped him. When we figure that out, we'll figure out who has the cloak." Neville said. "Anyone care to explain what this is about?" Harry stared at Ron and Ginny warningly for a moment. The invisibility cloak was crucial to the defeat of Voldemort last time. He was grateful that Ron and Ginny did not refute his words. "And what if we don't find it?" Ginny looked at him. She was still angry, but she was also very afraid for him and his safety. "We will," Harry promised. The weight of another secret, the fact that the Resurrection Stone had been destroyed by fiend fire, was extremely heavy. But he could not tell them. Not until Hermione found a way to help him survive the killing curse again. "You're damn right about that," Ron said. "I don't care if we have to overturn Britain to find it. But why is Harry's cloak so important?" Hermione asked. "Can't you just buy another invisibility cloak? I know they're expensive, but if we really need one, it's worth it." "The cloak is special," Harry said. "It doesn't just keep the wearer invisible. It keeps him hidden. It was passed down through my family. Only the rightful owner can really use it." "We're going to find it," Ginny said suddenly. Harry was both surprised and gratified that she came up and put her arm around his waist. He drew her closer. "I don't care what it takes," she murmured for his ears alone. Harry caught her and Ron exchanging a glance. "We've decided to forgive you," Ron said after a moment. "But you'd better tell us if something else like this happens in the future." Harry nodded, not feeling guilty because the Resurrection Stone had been destroyed several years ago. He cocked his head at Ron, wondering why he'd gotten over his anger so quickly. He was certainly grateful for it, but it wasn't like his best mate to forget something like this so quickly. Before he could mention this, Ron looked away. "Listen, about the old ball," he eyed Hermione hopefully. "You're still coming with me, right?" She smiled. I said yes the first time you asked, didn't I? Harry snorted at the memory. Ron had rushed up to Hermione in the common room immediately after the Yule Ball had been announced, tripped over his own feet, sprawled on the ground, and had asked her to go to the ball with him. He tried not to laugh. He really had, but the fact that everyone else who had witnessed his rather bumbling efforts had been rolling on the floor had been too much. Hermione, who had looked both pleased and bemused, had immediately said yes. Harry wondered if Hermione knew that her future self and Ron had been married. By the softness in her eyes whenever she looked at Ron, even at his clumsiest, he suspected that she might have guessed. Ron shrugged, trying, without much success, to look casual. Thought you might have, or gotten a better offer. Harry grinned down at Ginny. She returned it a little weakly. Hermione raised her eyebrows. From whom? I don't know, Ron said. Victor Krum, maybe? Victor Krum? Hermione said, shocked. Really? I went with Victor Krum to the Yule Ball last time. Why? Ron didn't notice you were a girl until after you'd already accepted Krum's invitation. Ginny informed her. Luna laughed. But Krum hasn't even asked me, Hermione said. Not that I'd go with him. Krum's probably heard all about how you and Ron are going together, Neville told her. Ron's been bragging about it for weeks. Is that why he doesn't come to the library anymore? She asked thoughtfully. Damn straight, Ron said darkly. Harry, Ginny said. We just seen Snape. He's agreed to give us the polyjuice potion so we could go together. I'll just be disguised as someone else. Harry grinned. Good. He brushed her lips with a kiss. If he hadn't, I wouldn't have gone at all. Who are you going as? Me, Luna said dreamily. I'll be Ginny and go with Neville. Is this a plan? Harry said. I mean, you'll have already thought of this. He hadn't heard a word of it. Instead, he debated as to whether or not he should just take Ginny, her family be damned, or whether he should just hide in the common room, and the other 3 champions could dance around with their dates without him. Of course we have, Ginny said. First I've heard of it, Ron said at the same time. Neville shook his head. Well, Hermione said, it's something us girls have thought about, at any rate. Now that we've all gotten into a fight, well, you 3 did, and decided on our dates for the Yule Ball, can we please get a practicing magic? HP. It was probably one of the strangest experiences in Harry's life. He whispered that in Ginny's ear before the champions and their dates were to enter the Great Hall. Except she didn't look like his wife. She looked like Luna. He felt slightly disoriented whenever he glanced at her. Let me get this straight, Ginny said. It was Luna's mouth talking, but Ginny's tone of voice and inflection that came out. Of all the strange things you've done, not least of which is traveling time, this is the strangest? Me looking like Luna. You want me to use polyjuice to turn myself into Ron? Harry retorted. Luna's like a sister to me. Seeing you in her is driving me barmy. Ginny looked slightly revolted. I see what you mean, she admitted. I take it we'll never play with polyjuice potion. Harry gaped at her. What do you mean play with polyjuice potion? Do they actually do that? She laughed. Some couples, I think. Not us, Harry said fervently. Definitely not, Ginny said, equally serious. They had no more chance to continue the discussion as the doors opened to the Great Hall. Harry watched as Krum and a very pretty but simpering girl entered first. He looked very surly, and Harry suspected that his date was far less satisfactory than Hermione. Fleur Delacour entered next with her date. It was odd, seeing her with another man besides Bill. He realized, with a jolt, that at this point in his life, at only 14, he already knew most of his future sisters-in-law. Cedric and Cho followed next, beaming and holding hands. Ready? Harry asked, offering his arm. Of course, Ginny said, taking it. They walked in together amidst wild cheering. The students at Hogwarts definitely enjoyed a spectacle. Harry's eyes found Ron and Hermione, and Neville and Luna. He only faltered a little bit at the oddness of seeing Luna and Ginny. He hoped no one else recognized it, although he rather thought that no one would. Ron let out a loud whistle, and Ginny laughed. They made their way through the throng of clapping students to the head table. Harry faltered again when he saw the judges. Madame Maxime, Igor Karkaroff, Ludo Bagman, and Albus Dumbledore sat together with. Percy Weasley. He exchanged wide-eyed looks with Ginny. I forgot, he said. How could he possibly have forgotten this? He watched with horror as the other champions and their dates filled the table, leaving only 2 places next to Percy. You're going to have to sit next to him, Ginny said in a quiet voice. I just can't. Harry gritted his teeth, already bracing himself as he made his way to their seats. Maybe it won't be bad. Remember, he didn't say anything when he saw us hugging, and he probably won't even see beyond Luna's face to Ginny. He took as long as he could. He pulled Ginny's chair out for her and exchanged pleasantries with Cedric. Finally, he could no longer avoid it, and he sat down. Hello, Luna, Percy said. Hello, Harry. Hi, Percy, Ginny and Harry chorused. I'm not going to hex you, Harry, Percy said. Harry replied. Thanks. It is a ministry occasion. After all, he said pompously. I've got to uphold appearances. Harry looked at him. That seemed a bit much, even for Percy. He was smiling, though, and it wasn't one of his fake smiles, either. It was a bit mischievous. It would have been more at home on Fred's or George's face. Percy was teasing him. Harry wondered vaguely when was it, exactly, that the world had turned upside down. Was it the day they'd come back? Later? Earlier? Glad to hear it, Harry said. How's the ministry working out for you? Are you one of the judges now? The ministry is wonderful, Percy said. And no, I'm not a judge. My boss is feeling ill, so he asked me to represent him here tonight. It's actually nice to be back at Hogwarts, although I'm quite pleased to be here as an adult, not a student. That's great, Harry said. You seem to have done really well for yourself if Mr. Crouch is letting you stand in for him. I think I've proven myself capable of it. Percy puffed his chest out. I'm not afraid to back down from hard work, and I expect Mr. Crouch knows that. It would seem so, Harry agreed. And because he didn't want Percy to stop talking to him, it felt ridiculously good to talk to a Weasley apart from Ron and Ginny that did not seem to hate him. He added, What is it you do at the ministry, precisely? Percy embarked on a long-winded explanation of the Department of International Magical Cooperation. Harry listened carefully and asked pointed questions. A plan began to form in his mind. Perhaps it would be Percy who chose to fight with Harry against Voldemort. If he were to join the Order of the Phoenix, he could be extremely useful. Not only could Percy make contacts, but he was sharp, and perhaps he could keep an eye out for traitors in the ministry itself. Ginny, beside him, joined in the conversation, and they were halfway through their meal before it dwindled. She pressed her hand on Harry's thigh. You're being very friendly, she said. I thought all the Weasleys hated Harry. It was an odd mixture of Ginny's tone and Luna's bluntness. Percy flushed bright red. Well, he stammered. I think, my sister. Yes, Ginny said sweetly. He glanced at her sharply, and Harry held his breath. Had Percy recognized Ginny after all? I don't approve of what happened. Not at all. Percy sat up straighter. But everyone else thinks that Harry, you took blatant advantage of her. And I was quite furious at first. Ginny was only 12, you see. Harry flushed and stared down at his half-eaten meal. He suddenly felt mortified. He glared at Ginny out of the corner of his eye. She pretended not to notice, but Harry knew that she was just as aware of him as he was of her. Perhaps it was payback for not telling her about the invisibility cloak. I think they both were in error, Percy said finally. I've tried to tell my family this, but they simply won't listen. Harry, didn't you tell me that they think you're going to be another Voldemort? Ginny asked. Percy squeaked and dropped his fork. They think you might, yes, Percy said once he'd recovered himself. Harry was not really capable of speaking at the moment, which is completely ludicrous. Harry jerked his head around so quickly that his glasses nearly slid off. You don't believe that, then? Only my parents and Bill and Charlie are afraid of that happening, Percy said. Fred and George just think you messed around with my sister. And, Harry, it's not like they're dead certain of it. They just think it's a risk. But you don't. Percy eyed him. You took a curse for me. That isn't exactly something a dark wizard would do. Harry would have liked to say more, possibly even confess everything to Percy, but his throat felt very tight. When he could breathe, normally again dessert had arrived, and the moment seemed to have passed. Ginny fidgeted around and elbowed him. He looked over at her. What? Nothing, she whispered. Didn't mean to, sorry. She withdrew the flask that contained polyjuice potion and took a long drink. Not a fan of butterbeer, Luna? Percy asked. Not at official functions, Ginny replied. Her voice was so dreamy and like Luna's that Harry grinned. Nargles like to, infest it. It'll make people act even crazier than normal. Not a good plan when this lot, Harry gestured at the vast crowd of students, are all together. He made a show of setting his own butterbeer aside. You're right, Luna, he added. Percy stared between Harry and Ginny for several uncomfortable moments. Harry started to sweat. Why can't the dancing start now? As if Dumbledore had heard his desperate thoughts, he stood. Harry immediately focused all of his attention on him with a feeling of great relief. He snorted when he remembered how terrified he'd been before when it was Parvati Patil he had taken to the Yule Ball and not Ginny. But that was then, and right now he wanted to escape from Percy. The first time he had danced with Ginny, at Ron's and Hermione's wedding. They had moved together like they had been born to it. This was long after they'd been as fully intimate as they could, and dancing was something that came almost as naturally as breathing. It had been wonderful, marred though it had been by the fact that Harry had wished that it was their own wedding. This was not like that. Once they were on the dance floor, Harry felt as awkward as he had dancing with Parvati. He suddenly had 2 left feet, and he had no idea where to put his hands. He knew where they would be if it was Ginny's real body, but he couldn't ignore the fact that it was Luna's he held so tentatively. I'm really quite flattered, Ginny murmured. Don't, Harry said. I'm making a fool of myself. He glanced over and saw Ron laughing at him. Even Hermione was laughing at him. He glared at them. At least I know you'll never stray, Ginny said. You already knew that, he retorted. Of course, she said. He groaned when he stepped on her foot. I'm sorry, Harry, she said. Luna's blue eyes gazed back at him. Close your eyes. Somehow, I don't think that'll help, he said. But he obeyed her anyway. She didn't say anything as they muddled through another few steps. She was steering him around, though, since he couldn't see anymore. Always and always, she finally said. I promise to love you without reservation, even when I'm in Luna's body. I promise to love and cherish you. I will mourn with you and laugh with you. Harry started to relax when he realized that she was repeating the wedding vows they had made to each other so long ago on a hill covered in heather. When you grieve, I will grieve. When you feel joy, I too will feel it. I'll grow with you, Harry whispered against her hair. With his eyes closed and hearing her say those words, he could pretend that Ginny looked the way she ought to. With my mind, my spirit, and my magic. In all ways, I will walk beside you. Through the dark and the light, joy and sorrow, Ginny said. Her voice shook a little, and Harry pulled her closer. I will comfort you, cherish you, and honor and respect you. Always and always, they said together. Thank you, Harry said when the song ended. I think I should have added, and I'll always save you from making a fool of yourself, Ginny added wryly. I'll remember that, Harry said. He opened his eyes. She was still looking like Luna, thankfully, but the bright, blazing look was all hers. Want to keep dancing? He asked, already whirling her around, in time to the faster tune. Harry found that for the next little while he did not have to close his eyes at all. Ginny was still Ginny, and the body suddenly didn't matter. He enjoyed himself quite a bit more than he had expected. All he had to do was keep his eyes on her, and nothing else seemed to matter. Harry, she finally said, panting a little, when a very fast song ended. I've got to, have a drink. He grinned at her. You do? Yes, she said, unless you want me to suddenly turn back into myself. And what if I said, he whispered in her ear, that we should escape right now and head to the room of requirement? I'd say that's the best idea you've had all night. Ginny grinned up at him. I'll go tell Luna. 10 minutes later, they were alone. No one had noticed them leave, and a night of revelry and exuberance ensured that their absence would not be noticed. Harry stared intently at Ginny, waiting for her features to change. Kiss me, Harry, she smiled at him. He shook his head. I have my limits, and kissing you when you look like Luna is way past them. It seemed to take forever, but gradually her hair went back to its normal deep red, and her eyes darkened to fire whiskey brown. Harry watched the changes intently, intrigued by them, wondering what it was about her that inflamed him so. Her hair, her eyes, her long, slim fingers, the length of her neck, the delicate ears. He finally came to the conclusion that it was all of it together. "Kiss me, Harry," she said again, and Harry readily obeyed. Afterward, they lay together in a tangle of limbs. Ginny rested her head on his chest, and he stroked her hair. "Is it just me," Ginny said huskily, "or does it get harder and harder to stop? Not that this isn't wonderful, but we still have 230 days until you turn 14, Harry told her. "Until then, we have to." She sat up, grinning at him. "You're counting the days?" "Of course," Harry said. "For how long?" "Several years," Harry said. "Good." She lay back down. "I'm glad I'm not the only one. I've been counting since the day we got back." And Harry couldn't help but kiss her again and again and again, until he'd had enough for the moment, and felt his eyes grow heavy with a very pleasant sort of exhaustion. He traced patterns on Ginny's back for the joy of it, and to keep himself awake. "We'd better go soon, Bright Eyes," he said finally. "We can't stay away from the common room much longer." "It's only 11, she said sleepily, after lazily checking her watch. "Let's stay until midnight." "I'm going to fall asleep," Harry told her. "I'll keep you awake," Ginny promised. "Not with that. I'm too tired. But I have a question for you." "All right," he said. "What happens if we don't find your cloak?" she asked. "I really think we will, Ginny," Harry said seriously. "And even if we don't, I've been thinking quite a lot about this in the last few days. I think I'm going to have to tell Hermione that I'm a Horcrux." "Why?" "Because if we're going to look for other ways for me to beat him," Harry said, "we're definitely going to need Hermione's help." "What about Dumbledore?" "His too," Harry said. "I want you to promise me something," Ginny said. "I want you to swear to me right now that you'll look for another way to survive if we don't find that cloak." "I will," Harry said. "I know," Ginny said. "I just wanted to hear you say it. You know, I'm certain that we'll find it, or Hermione will be brilliant, as usual, and find out a cure for the killing curse." "That's sure about it, are you?" "Yes," Ginny said, "because I would have come back for you." Harry pulled her tight against him, and she embraced him back just as fiercely. No words were needed. Harry was about to open his mouth to tell her how much he loved her, when a shining Patronus appeared in the room. "Rookwood is here. Come to my office," it said with Dumbledore's voice. "What the?" Harry said. He scrambled in emotion and back into his dress robes. Ginny did the same. He performed the disillusionment charm on both of them, and they sped out of the room and thundered down the corridor. Within moments, they stood before the gargoyle. "Pumpkin pasties," Harry said to it, and it sprung aside. Ron, Hermione, Neville, and Luna were already there, though it was apparent that they had just arrived. Luna still looked like Ginny, although she had wispy blonde streaks in her hair. They stood in his way, and Harry could not see around them. "How did Rookwood get here?" Harry asked, though he had a good guess. Ron looked at him. He appeared slightly uneasy, and he stepped aside so Harry could see who else was in the room. Dumbledore stood directly in front of a man who had apparently been stunned, with his wand pointed straight at him. Beside him was Sirius. He was wrapped in a black traveling cloak and looked entirely too pleased with himself. "I went and got him, of course," Sirius said. "I told you not to," Harry said, outraged. "Damn it, Sirius. Do you realize what could have happened to you?" Sirius raised his eyebrows. "I knew perfectly well. I just did it anyway." Harry whirled on his friends. "You knew about this. That's why you've been worried all week. I can't believe you didn't tell me." "Like you told us about the cloak?" Ron said. "Listen, remember how we forgave you right away? It's your turn, mate." Harry glared at him. They had gone behind his back to do this. They had obviously collaborated with Sirius, Dumbledore, and probably even Snape. They'd ignored the fact that Harry had wanted to think of another way, a way that would not involve putting his godfather at such terrible risk. Remus caused a slight diversion by exiting rather suddenly from the flue. "Were you in on this too?" Harry narrowed his eyes at him. "Did you know that Sirius was going to break into Azkaban?" "No," Remus said coolly. "Not until a few moments ago, anyway." Harry moved to stand beside him, glad that he had one ally. He folded his arms and glared at everyone. Everyone except Ginny. He couldn't quite bring himself to do that to her. What they had done and said in the last few hours was still too fresh for him to be angry with her. Unfortunately, Ron seemed to realize this, so he motioned her forward. "You deal with him." "Harry," Ginny said calmly, "I want you to take a good look around this room." He did, and felt another stab of anger when he saw Sirius and Rookwood. "Do you see Sirius?" she asked. "I'm beginning to think you can't." "Of course I can see him," Harry said. "Does he look dead? Or like he's been kissed?" "No," Harry said begrudgingly, knowing where she was going with this. "That doesn't mean anything, though. He could have. But he didn't." Ginny interrupted him impatiently. "He got in, he got out, and now he's brought Rookwood. You should be thanking him," she said firmly. "And more, you should thank us, since you didn't have to brood about it for the last week." "Fine," Harry sighed. "Thank you, Sirius. But if you ever do something like this again, I'll stammer at me?" Sirius asked. "Harry, if you think I'm not going to do risky things to help you defeat Voldemort, you're dead wrong. You aren't in this alone." Harry clenched his jaw. "Fine," he muttered again. "But stay away from Veils." The door opened again, and Snape strode in. "I've got the Veritasrum," he said, "and I've also done the enchantments to make them look as though they are in their beds." "Disappointed that I didn't die?" Sirius asked cheerfully. "No," Snape said absently. "You've got Rookwood. I didn't want you to die before you did that." Sirius laughed. "If it turns out that he didn't know of the prophecy," he pointed out, "I just saved your arse." Harry felt grudgingly curious. "How did you manage it?" "Flew on a broom to Azkaban, transformed, snuck into his cell, and used the portkey that Dumbledore made to get me back to Grimmauld Place," Sirius said easily, as if there had been nothing to it. "Why not come straight here?" Harry asked. "Why go to Grimmauld Place?" "We couldn't be sure exactly when I'd do this," Sirius said. "We thought it best if I took him there first, in case Dumbledore was meeting with someone. I'm actually a little early. I thought I'd have more trouble getting past the guards, the wizards, not the Dementors. Can we save this chat for later?" Snape said irritably. "By all means," Sirius gestured. "Ready?" Dumbledore asked. At Snape's nod, he said, "Innervate." Rookwood's eyes flew open, and he immediately began to struggle. Harry was brought back to 2 years prior, when Wormtail had been in this exact same room and in this exact condition. Rookwood, however, was far weaker than Wormtail had been. The bonds around him were very tight, and his movements feeble. He stopped resisting after moments, and as soon as he had, Snape poured the clear liquid into his mouth. "What is your name?" Snape asked. "Augustus Rookwood," he said, "pureblood follower of the Dark Lord." "We don't need to listen to that drivel," Sirius said. "Do you know the prophecy made about Harry Potter and the Dark Lord?" Snape ignored Sirius. "Yes," Rookwood said, "all of it." Harry's entire body relaxed. It was Rookwood. He'd been right. He just confessed to it under Veritasrum. He exchanged relieved glances with Ron, and resolved to apologize to Sirius for his reaction. "The Dark Lord is going to reward me," he said. "Beyond my wildest dreams, and he'll kill you, traitor," he said scathingly to Snape. "Not," Snape said, "if I kill you first." "Did you tell anyone else of this?" Dumbledore asked. "No," Rookwood said. "Didn't want to share." Rookwood laughed. It was a harsh, whooping sound that sent chills up Harry's spine. This man had played a long, subtle game with the intent to ruin absolutely everything. Yet Harry found himself not wanting to kill him in cold blood. "Reward me," he said again. "He's going to reward me. I'll be his best servant, the most loyal." His eyes closed again, though this time he had not been stunned. "I believe we have what we need to know," Dumbledore said. He didn't know of the prophecy, and he did not tell anyone. Harry stared down at Rookwood. He seemed very weak. The Dementors had taken almost everything from him, and had left him almost a hollow shell. Even Sirius had not been quite as afflicted as this, because he had been innocent in a way that Rookwood obviously had not been. "Dispose of him how you see fit," Harry said finally, looking at Snape, Sirius, Remus, and then Dumbledore. "Kill him if you judge it best, but make sure that he's silenced. If you leave him alive, make sure that what happened here tonight is buried so deep that Voldemort will never find it."